we'll talk to Barrie, who's calling in from New Zealand. Barrie, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Yeah, hi guys. I actually talked to you a few weeks ago, Dan, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
I come back
What's up, Barrie?
Something different. Yeah.
Okay.
The topic I wanted to talk about this time, I titled it Atheism and Cultural Relativism.
Okay, interesting. Go on.
So I'll start off with me, white, male, cis, atheist, middle class, educated. I guess you can say pretty privileged in the society I live in, right?
Well, you live in New Zealand, so already I'm jealous of you. So yes, that does make you privileged.
It's not a bad country, yeah. But, one aspect of New Zealand is the fact that it's a colonized country,
That's true.
Much like North America, I guess. And as an atheist, of course, I'm quite open to criticize Christianity or Islam or whatever it may be, but I sometimes feel really awkward when I'm dealing with our indigenous culture, the Maori people, because they have their own spiritual outlook, and it's a very holistic one. But, if it was some other kind of religious belief, I'd have no trouble at all criticizing it. But because of the power dynamic, being who I am and what I am, I feel awkward about criticizing people from an indigenous culture that have had their beliefs oppressed and crushed for hundreds of years. A culture where their spirituality is very important to them,
Yes. Yeah, it is awkward. And I this is a great thing to bring up, because I think largely from what I've seen in the short time I've been in the community, in the past, I don't know how much this question has really been addressed. I think people now are kind of more thinking about this as, the internet continues to grow, bring in more voices, and people from different perspectives are continuing to have this dialogue. I, for one, when I come on this platform and I get to talk, I'm very, I make sure to talk about what's important to me. And I think the important thing is talking about the people who are in our government, the people who are influencing the nation, who are trying to make their policies happen, who are trying to make their way of life happen, and trying to influence everybody else. If the Aborigine people were trying to do that for us, and they were a majority in our government, I think I would be more critical of that too. But it's just not a thing that's happening. So I'm mostly against Christian nationalism, because I think Christian nationalism is a threat, and I think that we have a right to talk about that. So yeah, it's a tough thing, because at the same time, I don't believe in any other particular religious tradition around the world, indigenous or otherwise. So I guess I don't spend my time talking about it as much, but it doesn't mean that they're not worth exploring, right? What do you think, Apostate Prophet?
Well, if I may say a few words about that, I don't know very much about the whole religion and the mythology of the Maori people, but as far as I understand it, they simply have certain nature beliefs. They explain the origins of water and fire and this and that in different ways. And just like many other people, just like many other different cultures in history, as is common to anthropology, they have their own ways to explain the origins of life and the world. It was very common in Europe and in surrounding cultures and continents to have some very primitive, and I'm trying to say this in a non-offensive way, primitive from today's perspective, ways to explain how the world emerged and how it was created. There are different creation myths. So these people simply had their own interpretations of how the world works, because they didn't understand it much better. They still, in smaller numbers nowadays, hold on to those beliefs. And religion is a regular, normal, essential, maybe, part of human civilization and history. Nevertheless, although I don't believe that every wrong idea and every ridiculous idea, as wrong and as ridiculous it is, deserves to be criticized, or that we have this obligation to criticize them, if I did know that in a certain culture there are such religious practices that directly oppress the members of this religion and that cause major harm to them, and there are people within this culture who really have this cry for help, and who really want to get out and whose lives are turned to hell because of these religious beliefs, then I think, I'm sorry, despite the history, despite what is behind it, I mean, it deserves to be pointed out. It deserves to be criticized. We should have the right to say, hey, look, I understand the history, I understand the sensitivities, but these and these and these and these practices are completely contrary to human flourishing, and they cause so much pain, and they need to stop. It's just my 2 cents. Yeah.
I think I agree with you. I think we're probably on the same page here in that, as far as writing blogs or as far as doing activism, right, for what's happening in the world that we live in today, I think we only have so much time. And so we always want to spend our time dealing with what I would call the biggest threats, right? I would say Christianity and Islam are probably up there as far as what we have to deal with. That doesn't mean that, of course, it's not worth pointing out. We have to point it out, but yeah, it is kind of weird. Even just talking about Islam, with you today, Apostate Prophet, I do feel a certain sense of hesitancy, not because I don't think it's BS, not because I don't think it's not real, but because I didn't grow up in that culture. And there is a part of me that, in our current culture says that I have to watch myself when looking at that. So I understand the hesitancy there, I think. And plus, it's always embarrassing to get something factually wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's just always embarrassing to get called out. So, talking about religions that I haven't spent a lifetime in, it seems like I'm always going to be at a disadvantage, right?
You don't have to have an opinion on everything that is going on in the world.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
If you have this will to stand up for people, or to stand up against grave injustices, and you become aware that a certain belief system or a certain ideology or certain practices are extremely harmful and very much against everything that you want to protect, then it's worth speaking out. That's just what I think.
100%. I agree with you there. Barrie, what do you think?
Well, I think you're making a really good point there. The distinction there that, if there's demonstrable harm being done to people, that's the one you've got to go for, right? And, I don't have any trouble with that. But I guess what I was getting at for me was more on a personal level, where just somebody invokes a belief and it's something that I just think it's not true. So it may not be one of those ones that you're talking about. It's not on the heavy level like slavery or something like that. But I don't want to feel like I'm being a hypocrite. I want to be sensitive to other people's beliefs, but I also want to be honest about who I am and be able to say, well, yeah, thanks for that, but I just don't think that's right, But that's the sort of thing. Am I allowed to do that? I'll give you a couple of quick examples in the Māori context, where, like I said, they're fairly harmless, but I don't believe them. One, for example, is in Māori mythology, there's a mythological creature called a taniwha, which is usually represented a bit like a dragon. And a taniwha is usually a benevolent creature that guards, say, a waterway or something like that. There have been cases where road construction projects have had to be diverted, and this is in New Zealand in the 2020s, because it's going to upset the taniwha. So millions of dollars of government money is being spent on a road project, and they've had to go around a certain geographical area, which otherwise would be quite suitable to go through, in terms of the geography. But because of the taniwha supposedly living there, it's had to divert. Now, on the one hand, do I really care that much which way the road goes? I suppose not. But I'm sorry, I don't believe there are any taniwha. I just don't,
Yeah. That reminds me, in Iceland, I don't know how true this is now. I think this was a couple of years ago, but a survey of something like 50% of the people there believed in fairies, and they actually adjusted their construction based on their belief in fairies. So yeah, I would say that, yeah, in terms of public policy, yeah, absolutely go for it. I think you have it right on the personal stage. But on a personal thing, if somebody tells me, yeah, I think my grandmother's in heaven now. I'm not gonna say, yeah, your grandma's not in heaven. Like that's just a dick move. I don't know. I think that's something. I don't know if there's going to be a hard and fast rule. I think that's something that we all just kind of have to figure out in our personal lives and navigate it. It's really awkward for me, Barry. I'll tell you this, because I talk to people, some in my life, who know that I do shows like this and who are afraid to tell me what they think about their religion or whatever, because they know that I have a lot of thoughts. So it's almost like, okay, well, I don't want to be a guy that nobody wants to talk to because I have strong opinions about things, right? And I'm sure you don't want to be that person either. So it's a tough thing. But I think Apostate Prophet and I are on the same level when it comes to, like, is it oppressing people in certain ways? Are certain groups of people not having their voices heard, or are human rights being violated? Yeah, absolutely. Speak up. If it's affecting the public, yeah, absolutely. I think that's reason to say something.
I mean, in all honesty, this might not be an entirely popular opinion, but you don't have any obligations to, to abide by certain values of consistency, or you are not obligated to say, well, if I criticize one religion, then I should also criticize the other religion. I mean, you don't have such a responsibility that you have to, account for or anything like that. And I think no one should be bothered by having to hold on to such restrictions. You don't have any such obligations at all. If there is something out there with a certain religion or a certain cultural beliefs that you think are ridiculous to such an extent that they make life harder for everybody, then I think you are completely justified in, sharing your objections about that and maybe calling it ridiculous, and or in criticizing that and saying, hey, guys, I really appreciate how much you guys appreciate your culture, but it interferes with the rights and with what is more practical for all of us. So I'm sorry, I can't really respect that. I mean, in the end, you can discuss it, and you don't have to commit a genocide just because you disagree with people.
Yeah, totally. Barry, I think that's all the time we have for this call, but thank you so much for calling in. This was a great topic conversation. I hope you can call in again with some more great topics to talk about.